Good morning, welcome to Land's End Airport. We're in the Cessna C172SP Skyhawk, and this is part 1 of my cross-country tour. We're at Land's End Airport, or St Just Airport to give it its proper name, and this is about as far southwest as you can go on the British mainland. Now the cross-country tour will be a series of videos flying from here in Land's End all the way to John O'Groats in the very northeast of Scotland, which is as far northeast as you can go on the British mainland, and we'll be visiting airports and points of interest along the way, trying to get a good feel for the Orbx True Earth scenery, crisscrossing the country and making our way up towards the northeast. I don't know how many videos this is going to take. It will be quite a few. We're going to try and keep them short. This one will be a bit longer because of the intro, but otherwise we'll just get in the plane and go. Going to try and keep them down to below 25 minutes each. Alright then, let's get into the aircraft. And as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward aircraft. Inside, you've got the G1000. You won't see those screens light up. I've turned them off to save frames. And then you've got a basic switch panel. You have your breaker panel. You've got your engine controls, just mixture and throttle on this aircraft. Got flaps control, a couple of other verniers. You've got your standby instruments, not many of those, obviously just the ones that you really need. The radio's over in the corner there with the autopilot. I'll be using the radios and autopilot on my G1000 instead. And I do think that works because, as you can see, the G1000 in this aircraft does have the autopilot panel on its bezels, so presumably the one is slave to the other. And then down at the bottom we have the big trim wheel for the aileron trim, and we have the fuel selector, and that's about it for this aircraft, so let's not worry about the interior anymore. Right then, let's get some power to the aircraft, get the avionics up and running. Dismiss that warning. Some initial G1000 setup. There's the MFD up and running. See our course today, if I zoom out a little bit. So we are starting here at Land's End. We're going to go take a look at the Lizard Point. Lizard is the most southerly point on the island of Great Britain, so I thought given we're doing southwest to northeast, looking at the most southerly point would be interesting, and I'll probably try and look at the most northerly point when we're on the way to the northeast in Scotland. From Lizard Point we will then head in the general direction of the final stop, which is Bodmin. However, this is not a fixed flight plan. We're not going to be flying IFR, we will be VFR with flight following only, and so we're free to deviate from this plan, and we will do. This is a sightseeing trip. We're going to go and look at points of interest along the way, so I'll navigate us there. There is one particular point of interest actually marked on the course. You can see it's not labelled because it's a user waypoint. I'm not going to tell you what it is. We'll see when we get there, though you may be able to guess if you know the area quite well. Other than that, we might take a little look at Falmouth along the way, and maybe some other small towns and other sites worth seeing. I'm going to try and keep these videos down to no more than 25 minutes each, apart from this one, which will be longer because of all of the intro that we're doing. Alright then. Zoom in, you can see the airport. A lot of runways here at Land's End, a lot of runways generally on the airfields around this peninsula. Unsurprising because of the very changeable wind and the fact the wind can be quite strong. They need to have several runways. So in terms of which runway we'll get today, I suspect it will be 3-4, but we'll find out in a minute. First of all, let's have a listen to the ATIS, as always, courtesy of Active Sky.
Echo, Golf, Hotel, Kilo, Airport Information, India, 1205, Zulu, Weather, Wind, 302 at 7, Visibility, 10,000, Sky Condition, Few Clouds at 8,900, Temperature, 182.9, QNH, 1011, Advise on initial contact, you have information, India.
Okay, we have India. Let's get the panel lights on. Alright, now the battery on this thing's not going to last for very much longer, so I want to get the engine started and get the generator going. So let's make sure the parking brakes are on. Beacon light on so people know we're going to start the engine. Fuel pump on. Set the mixture to full, open the fuel valve, shove my head out the door and shout clear prop, and start the engine. Okay, there you go. That's, I think, a good engine start. Let's have a quick look. Electrical looks fine. Oil pressure is fine, it's dropping down towards 25. Oil temperature is fine. Fuel flow is fine. We are good. Fuel pump can come off as the engine is now sucking its own fuel. And the tank is on auto. Pitot heat can go on. And now we're ready to go and ask the tower for a departure. So let's tune to the ground, 120.25. Now you're going to notice I'm using the Prepar3d built-in ATC for this. And there are reasons for that. All I want is flight following. It's very simple. And a little bit of tower control just to give me a runway and clear me to land. I tried to use PF3 for this. I'm sure there is a way to get flight following from PF3, but buggered if I know what it is. And so after a couple of tries I thought, you know what, we'll just stick with the simplest option for this flight. Maybe I'll add PF3 later if I can figure out how to get it going, but for right now this is the easiest way, so just ignore the fact that the accents are of course wrong. We'll just assume that for whatever magical reason every controller happens to be an American, and I guess my pilot does too.
Land and ground, Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, request taxi for east departure. Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, taxi to and hold short of runway 3 or via taxiway. Contact tower on 120.25 when ready. Taxiing hold short runway 3 or using taxiway. Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango.
Okay, it is 3-4, that's what I thought it probably would be. 3-4 runs across this way, so we're going that way. And a couple of things we should do first. So your nav lights and taxi lights can go on because we're going to move. Let's release the parking brakes and let's set 10 degrees of flat ready for takeoff, and I'm going to keep the trim just a little ways more down so the nose doesn't suddenly spring up on takeoff. Alright, I think we're good. Let's make a move. Okay, we're moving. Past these aircraft. See a Sopwith Camel. This is UK 2000's VFR Airfields St Just. Like many of the airfields we're going to be visiting over the next few weeks, it's part of their VFR Airfield series. I have expounded its praises on the channel before, so I'll just leave it to saying it's really good, and if you like flying VFR in the UK, you should definitely consider it. Right, we're at the holding point. let's request takeoff clearance.
Penzance Tower, Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, ready for departure to the east at runway 34. Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, cleared for takeoff, runway 34, departure to the east approved. Cleared for takeoff, runway 34, Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango.
Right, we'll just line up. Quite bouncy this grass strip. It's going to be quite hard to control on the takeoff roll. Right, quick last minute check. Flaps are set, lights are set, engine controls are set. G1000 is ready to go. I'll just dial in an initial climb into the flight director. And we are ready. Alright. Well, let's roll. See what I mean about it being hard to control? Airspeed's alive. And there's rotate. And we're up. And 60 knots, flaps can come up. And I'm going to go to an initial height of just 1,000 feet. And let's begin a turn. Going to come around
500.
to the east. Until we're facing the bay. There is the bay. Let's roll out there. And we'll trim down as we just hit 1,000 feet. Oh, we just hit 1,100 feet, so yeah, we can stop there. It's fine. I'm not massively worried about altitude. I've not got it assigned. Power back.
500.
That's the radio altimeter, of course. 500 above. Right, I'm going to go to autopilot now. And heading mode. And we're on our way. Okay, so the very first point of interest for us is Penzance, as in the Pirates of Penzance. I think we did better actually at about 1,500 feet. Let's make our way up there slowly. But with the spotting view, sightseeing view I think I want to call it, you can still see it even though we're a little bit nose up. So there is Penzance, right on the coast. Often thought of as kind of the most southwesterly town in the UK. I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but it's certainly one of them. go to Culdrose approach 134, sorry, 0.05, and request our flight following.
Culdrose approach, Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, type Cessna, Saitek 4 miles east of Penzance, request flight following. Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, Culdrose approach, squad 4212.
4212.
Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango, radar contact 5 miles east of Penzance, 1,300, human H, 1011.
Just going over Penzance Harbour now. Now then, again on the sightseeing view, you can see what looks like a small island in the bay there. That is St Michael's Mount.
Oscar Sierra Tango, did you hear my last transmission?
I did, thanks for reminding me.
Copy, Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango.
St Michael's Mount, and let me just, a little ways left so we can fly straight over it, is a rocky island. It's basically part of a promontory that was there that's gradually eroded away, but it was made of harder rock than the shore, so it's now higher than the shore. It can be reached on foot by a causeway at low tide. You can't see that on the scenery, I guess the scenery is high tide. And on top of there is a castle and a church. Church is still in use. I'm not sure if the castle is occupied by permanent occupiers or not. I've never actually been, but it's worth pointing out, well, not only because it's interesting, but also because it has a twin in France called Mont Saint-Michel off the north coast of France in the Channel, and similarly it's a little way offshore, can be reached on foot by a causeway at low tide, has a castle and a church on top, was formerly a monastery, as was St Michael's Mount, and they were both Benedictine monasteries, and that's the connection between them. They're both named after St Michael, and they were both part of the Benedictine order. You can see the castle buildings down there, just going off the bottom of the screen. Make a bit more of a rightward turn. Mont Saint-Michel is quite a bit bigger though than St Michael's Mount, and it has more buildings on it, and it has at least some permanent occupation, so there is a little settlement on Mont Saint-Michel that I'm not sure there is on St Michael's Mount. Right, back in the cockpit you can see the lights of an airfield over there. That is RNAS Culdrose, Royal Navy Air Station, and it's a Navy base, Naval Aviation Base. Lots of helicopter traffic, but also some fixed wing. I think they use it for training pilots, and it is quite a big, well-known base. It's, I think, founded in World War II originally. Many airfields and air bases were created around the country during World War II. Obviously, it would have been RAF at that point, and at some point, it's become a naval air station. So, we're approaching Lizard Point now, and on the sightseeing view you can see the lighthouse there. It's just under my nose on the outside view. Now, what's interesting about that lighthouse is that it doesn't exist in the real world. There is no lighthouse there, and this is an example of autogen gone wrong. So basically something in the land class data tells autogen that it should put a lighthouse there, so it does, but there is no lighthouse on that point. There is a lighthouse at Lizard Point, but it's not there. That is just a generic lighthouse model that I think comes from the Orbx stock library. The actual lighthouse at Lizard Point is behind it, so you can probably now see there's a building coming up white building, a couple of towers on it. The far tower at the back, that is the actual lighthouse at Lizard Point. And this building is modelled on the real building, you know, it looks like the real building, so you wonder why Orbx didn't think on to remove the auto-gen, which I'm sure they could have done quite easily. So we pass over the Fate Lighthouse. I think I saw some lightning out to sea there. And now we're going to pass over the real lighthouse, and there it is. So that's the building at Lizard Point. That is representative of what's there in the real world, and that is the most southerly point on the island of Great Britain. Okay, here's our next point of interest. You can see it ahead of us right here. Those look like satellite dishes, and indeed they are. If you look on the sightseeing view, you get a slightly better view of them.
500.
And this is the satellite downlink station at Goonhilly. This used to be BT's main Earth station in the UK. They have now, I think, moved elsewhere and rented it out to a private company. I don't know exactly what it's used for now. Well, satellite downlink obviously, but which satellites I don't really know. But you can see it's nicely modelled. The buildings are pretty much where they should be, as are the dishes, though there are quite a few more dishes than that apparently.
Turn right heading 050, Whiskey Tango Flight.
Okay, we need to gain a bit more altitude to make sure we clear the hills.
Descend and maintain 2,300. Cleared visual. Runway 5 approach. Advisory on 119.75. Whiskey Tango Flight.
Now I'm going to turn right and head towards Falmouth. So we're now approaching Falmouth. It's the town you can see ahead of us here. It's quite a large port town here in Cornwall. Quite big, I think, in the yacht racing world. But also I think there is some commercial traffic in and out of this harbour. Get a bit closer, we can see a bit more detail. There are some points of interest to be seen. Drop the view a little bit so we can see over the nose, and you probably see some more white object down there. Switch to sightseeing view and you can see it in a bit more detail. Let's just zoom in the view, and you can make out there what is well, Falmouth Castle. So it's a castle, perhaps unsurprisingly. Lighthouse there, and in a shocking twist, that lighthouse does not exist in the real world. Who would have thought that would happen, eh? I jest, but again it's auto-gen. However, if we head a little ways to the right, you can see this object here. That is a real lighthouse. Just keep it on the bottom of the screen there. And it's just a light at the entrance to the harbour. It's not a long-range lighthouse, but that's the real thing. And again, Orbx have modelled it, so you would have thought they'd have dealt with the other one on the scenery, but never mind. Right, let's just pop out the aircraft for a minute. And we'll come around. Get a slightly better view of all of that. And again, sorry, I can't quite get the camera control I would like, but that's not a bad view. Yeah, there's the castle and its grounds. fake lighthouse and the real lighthouse. We head towards the left. We can fly over Falmouth docks, and you can see, I mean, they're modelled, but I wouldn't say they're spectacularly modelled. There's the beach down there, Falmouth Beach. Come around, we get a better look at that. And as we fly over the castle and the fake lighthouse, we'll see a bit more of that. Right, you may just be able to see down there, maybe. Let's just come down a little bit, get a downward attitude, and get a little bit closer. So there are two objects sticking up there. They're quite hard to see. Let's go to the sightseeing view. Okay, now they're obvious. So we have a big chimney, which is associated somehow with the clayworks. And P3D has modelled that. It's quite tall by the looks of it. You can see there's actually some flame coming out the top. That's quite a nice touch, I think. And then right next to it is what I took initially to be a television transmission tower, but it's not. If you look, we were just slightly on the wrong angle. It's actually a crane. And it's quite well modelled. I mean, I'm assuming it must be permanently on site, because there's no way Orbx would have bothered modelling a temporary crane. And I guess you must be able to see those for miles around. And the next thing we're going to see, you definitely can see for miles around. And to see it, we just need to make a bit of a right turn. And it's right there. You might be able to see some red there, but again, you won't have the resolution. I can barely see it. But if we go over to the bird's eye view, you can probably see it a bit better now. There in the middle, and it's a TV transmission tower. What's interesting is that Orbx has gone the whole hog in terms of modelling it.
500.
They've modelled it as a separate piece of scenery. I don't think this is a sort of standard TV transmission tower. We'll fly past that and have a look at it. And from there we will
500.
head towards our final point of interest before we go to land at Bodmin. Again, ignore the radar altimeter.
500.
Some of these little hillets are quite tall though, so I've got to be careful. But you can see the scars on the landscape from the clay mining. And here is the TV tower. Just make sure we pass it far enough off to the right. Should go past on the left here. That's kind of cool. Again, that hill is not as near as it looks, trust me. But it is still quite near. Right, I'm turning to head towards our final point of interest. And for this one, we're going to want to slow down a little bit and also pop outside the aircraft. So... See the roads down there? Orbx haven't actually drawn a vector road, but it's just there on the satellite imagery. Just correct our course a little bit. I'm going to zoom out so we can get a good view.
500.
Now, if you're not seeing anything yet, don't worry about it, because this one's going to sneak up on us. I can actually see the location now, but then of course I know exactly what I'm doing. Alright, you may be able to see it if you know what you're looking for. If not, it will become very obvious very soon. I'm just going to put down some flaps since we've slowed quite a long way. And there it is. There it is. That, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope by now it's very obvious, is the Eden project. And the Eden project is a series of domes built into an old mine there. I think it's might be clay or chalk. And it comprises a number of domes within which are plant habitats for various different kinds of ecosystem, and there are a lot of endangered plants there from all over the world. And it's an education centre as well as a entertaining day out for the family, I guess. Never been there in the real world. I would quite like to. It looks fairly spectacular for real. I think Orbx have done a decent job of modelling it. It's, you know, it's okay. As a POI, I can live with that. And that is pretty much our main POI for today. Let's just get back into the aircraft. And now, put a little bit more power. And I'm going to make a left turn. Going to head up to 1400 feet because that's where I should be to begin my approach into Bodmin when we get there. And we'll tell them we want to land.
Bodmin Tower, Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, 4 miles south to land. Cessna Golf, Hotel Oscar Sierra Tango, Tower, flight left base, runway 31, UNH 1011. Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango, cleared to land, runway 31. Cleared to land, runway 31. Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango.
So we're going straight in. Let's... bit of a rightward turn. And we'll make right base. Left base, even. Yes. Say, right base would make no sense, the airport is over there. Airport's actually down here, so let's adopt a nose down attitude. Let's go 20 degrees of flaps. Quite a steep initial approach that I'm taking here, but that's alright. And then autopilot can come off.
500.
There we go. Right. So the airport's just over here. Landing speed around about 60-ish knots, maybe a little bit slower even. Let's go flaps full.
$500.
Wind is across, so I'll account for that. Crab it a little bit. Okay, not the world's best landing there.
Cessna Oscar Sierra Tango, exit runway when able.
But you know, on a grass strip, for me, that's not terrible. And he wants me to exit the runway. I'm going to go off to the right here. Let's just stop there. Parking brake on, engine off. Okay, engine is off. Beacon and nav lights off. Pitot heat off. Dismiss that warning. Flaps are up. Mixture and prop back to nothing. And yeah, aircraft is cleaned up. Alright then, avionics off. Okay, welcome to Bodmin everybody. This is a UK 2000 VFR airfield, as so many of them will be. And this is our final destination for today. We will leave from here at the beginning of the next leg and go who knows where. In the meantime, thank you for your time and sticking with me. Hope you enjoyed this and come back for part 2 of my cross-country tour very soon.